Hello, friends! Overnight, for overnight for me, for you, maybe it was just in the day, but the Anti-Mage persona came out. That is what matters. And anytime a persona, arcana, fancy item set, anytime those come out, a hero tends to get picked a lot more as people are wanting to play with that cool item. So I thought it would be helpful. What should we do as a hard support? We're about to see a lot more anti-mages either on our team or against our team. How can we win these games? Now, the cool thing about this, a reason why it's a kind of a cool opportunity, is that the same playstyle will work whether he's on your team or on the enemy team. That playstyle is win your lane so that you can rotate and go start making space and take objectives. If he's on our team, of course, we want him to have a good start, get a good Battle Fury timing, and then quickly go rotate to make space for Anti-Mage so that he can farm and reach that point where he can carry us. Now, if he's on the enemy team, we still want to win our own lane so that we can rotate. If the lane is close, we can't really leave. So we want to win it. We want to leave. We want to go to our off lane, which is where the enemy anti-mage is. And we're going to go bully him out of his lane. We're going to take objectives. We're going to create action and increase the tempo of the game so that anti-mage does not have space to farm and, win the game. We don't want him to. To an extent, this applies to any carry, where it's like, why would I not want to win my lane? And why would I not want to be productive as a hard support? And that's like true. But some games you can get away with like just babysitting your safe lane for a longer period of time. And other games, like you can go try to create action, but the enemy carry might just actually fight back, like if they're a Juggernaut or an Ursa. Whereas Anti-Mage is this extreme case where he's always going to avoid fighting, or he should. And he's going to avoid fighting and just farm. And so this playstyle really works with an anti-mage in the game, in my opinion. So before we can go into that, before we can talk about what heroes are good with or against anti-mage and about that playstyle, we need to understand what is anti-mage good at, what he stumbling around, what is he weak at. You need to understand the hero before we can beat him or enable him or her. Now with a new persona, I guess that's what we're gonna see. We're gonna see a lot more hers. Because that's what this is. But anyways, let's get into it. His strengths tend to be that he is very good against spellcasters. If you think about it, 3 of his spells help him with this. He burns mana, he has a spell shield which provides magic resistance, and that spell shield also makes it difficult to target him with single target spells. And then he has an ultimate that does damage based on how much mana you're missing. So all 3 of those combined with a mobility spell to actually blink on top of spellcasters who tend to like to stay in the backlines, make Anti-Mage extremely effective against, spellcasters. So high mobility, I just alluded to that a bit, where his blink lets him move around a ton. It's just highly mobile. That's all there is to say about that. Naturally, it's a strength because the more you can move around your map. So in the beginning of the game, it's helpful to help him farm. And then in the mid to late game, it is helpful to cut waves and get away with it, but to also jump the back line like we just discussed. Now, elusive tends to overlap with high mobility a lot, but I do think it's a little separate. So take Queen of Pain, for example. She is a very mobile hero because she also has a blink spell, but she blinks in, and then maybe you just kill her because she's not elusive. Anti-Mage is elusive because he has his spell shield, which makes it difficult to target him. But he also tends to buy a Manta, which makes it unclear for some heroes, like, oh, which one do I target now? He can Manta to get rid of silences and then blink out. He tends to buy items like Butterfly, which make it difficult to hit. He might get Satanic or BKB, which makes it hard to lock him down. That's why I consider Anti-Mage an elusive hero, along with the fact that he can, he has 2 talents to either lower his blink cooldown or to get that uncontrollable illusion, which all of that just makes it difficult to lock this hero down. He also has the cast range on the talent. Like, there's so many things that make him elusive. And it does overlap with the mobility, but it is a little separate. And then he's an excellent split pusher because he is good against, high mobility and elusive. Or because he has those 2 strengths, he's now a good split pusher, where because he farms so fast with a Battle Fury, that should probably have been a strength on here too. Because he farms so fast, he cuts a wave and then he gets away. So it's really difficult to chase him down due to his mobility and elusiveness. and he's good at it. It's not like a Panic. I can't think of anyone. It's not like a sniper trying to split push where he's not going to do it that fast. And then if you jump him, he's just like, I'm dead. Oh no. So clear strength of Anti-Mage. And then, not on here, but he is a fast farmer when he gets a Battle Fury. He has one of the, if not the best base attack time in the game. So he just scales really well with attack speed. But no hero is perfect. He has some weaknesses. So he starts fairly slowly. And actually, I think there's a misconception here. In my opinion, he's actually a decent laner in a lot of matchups for the first couple levels. And then he drops off quite a bit until he gets his Battle Fury. That would be when the slow start is starting to end. But when he gets his Battle Fury, he still needs to farm a bit. And it's not until, for me, my mental timing for the Anti-Mage is 25 minutes. That is when he should have his Battle Fury. Well, he should have his boots, treads probably, then a Battle Fury. That's probably, ideally, it's by the 15-minute mark. Sooner than that is great. Later than that, depends on the game. Then he has the Manta, and then he has the Basher. And he should have all three of those major items by 25 minutes. Now, of course, for some of you, depending on your rank in the game, that may be quite a bit delayed. But it honestly still works because in a lot of games, like, Anti-Mages will be slower because they're not as good, but so will the opponents. So, like, in this bracket, like my bracket, the timing needs to be around 25 minutes to compete with the enemy. But in lower games, like, if the enemy is not online till, like, they're supposed to be online at 20 minutes, but they're not online till, like, 30 minutes, then it's kind of okay for your Anti-Mages to not come online till, like, 35 minutes. It's not ideal, but don't take that hard 25 minutes as like, oh, this Anti-Mage is, so bad. Like, it does adjust per rank. So he does have a slow start until he hits that 25 minutes, and then that's like go time. And then he's actually not, well, let's get to that actually. That's the next two. So his physical damage is not the best. He's actually designed to be good against spellcasters because he burns mana. So if you have no mana to burn, or you have like a BKB so you can't burn mana, he just loses a big part of his skill set. He can't burn mana, so he's not doing damage. And then his ultimate isn't going to do any damage to you. And part of what makes him strong is he burns all his target's mana, so they can't cast spells. And so if you can't do that and they're still able to cast spells on you, you're suddenly like, I don't feel nearly as good. And his items tend to reflect attack speed. He tends to buy like Manta, Butterfly. The Abyssal doesn't give attack speed, but that's another. He wants attack speed so he can burn mana quickly, he can farm fast, and then he can proc bashes more often. But what that means is that, his items tend to be like Battle Fury, Manta, let's say Abyssal, Butterfly, maybe a BKB, and then what's the last item? It's not usually like a Daedalus. Sometimes it's a Divine Rapier, because nothing else scales enough to actually give him physical damage. Like, Assault Cuirass is pretty uncommon. Scotty, good item for the hero, but not really a physical damage item. His personal physical damage is not amazing in the late game. And the other side of that is he is not the best against pure physical damage. His spell shield is meant to reflect magic damage, and it gives him magic resistance. But his items overall, his stat growth as well, tends to not give him a lot of health or armor, and he just tends to lose against pure physical damage. And that's why another misconception is that he is a late game hero. That's actually not true, in my opinion. To me, let's pretend a game is an hour, 60 minutes. The first 20 minutes is the early game. The next 20 minutes, 20 to 40 minutes, is the mid game. And then the late game is 40 to 60 minutes. Ultra late game is 60 plus. Let's not worry about that. Many people think Anti-Mage is like, okay, 40 minutes to 60 minutes, that is when he's ready to go. I disagree with that. I think Anti-Mage is like I said, the 25-minute mark when he has Basher, up to about 45-minute mark when he should like finish being 6 slotted. That is his strength. He is similar to Alchemist, where he needs time to farm, but then he comes online very quickly after that, and he has a very strong mid-game timing. But after he has hit 6 slots, if he doesn't win the game and the enemies start to catch up to him and they also get to 6 slots, a 6-slotted Anti-Mage will lose a one-on-one versus a lot of other 6-slotted carries like Phantom Assassin and Troll Warlord. That's why Anti-Mage is not the best late game carry. But if he is 6-slotted against a PA who only has 3 or 4 items, the Anti-Mage is going to win. So that's why he is this kind of a later mid-game hero to early late-game hero and not a true late-game carry. All of that ties to the physical damage, and I didn't really say it, but the squishiness, where it connects to that physical damage aspect. He just, like, if he is locked down, you tend to be able to kill him. He's not like a... Centaur's not a good example because he's an offlaner, but who's difficult to kill? Like Medusa. Medusa's really hard to kill. Spectre, really hard to kill. Like, they are not squishy late-game carries. Now again, this is kind of optimal peak play that I'm talking about. For your pub games, and especially if you're at a lower rank, he does tend to function decently in the late game because of that. Let's go back to the strengths page. Because he's so mobile and elusive, many people struggle to play against him properly in lower ranked pub games. So he can be an okay late game hero. And don't get me wrong, I don't think he's like awful in the late game, but he's just not like a true late game carry like Medusa, who just, because of their skill set, they just scale fantastically into the late game. So, combining all of that, when we're thinking about what hard supports to play now, we tend to want to focus on the weakness aspect. So if he's on our team, we know he's going to have a slow start. We know he's probably not the best laner. So we want to pick a hero that can secure his lane. Someone who is a lane bully, perhaps. Someone who is really good at stacking, so that if he does have kind of a slow start, he can catch up on the jungle stacks. Typically, you want a good lane bully more than someone who can stack, but you just want to keep that he has a slow start in mind and that you want to secure his lane, and then you know that he is going to farm. Like, whether he had a good or bad lane, he's going to farm till at least, like, in my example, 25 minutes, but in pub games, probably like 30 to 35 minutes. And, you know, the meme is like 40 minutes to an hour, but he's going to be farming, and you're going to need to make space. So you need you need a hard support who can get stuff done, who can go to the off lane with the off laner, the 4 support, who can rotate around with the mid lane maybe, and you want to create space for Anti-Mage. In terms of physical damage, as the hard support, we don't really need to worry about that. Give me a hard support who's like, I just apply a lot of physical damage. Not really there. Another weakness that maybe I should have mentioned on here, but it's actually just a weakness of all carries, not all carries, but most, is lockdown. Most carries, they bring the damage, but they don't really like to buy a lot of lockdown, or they don't have it in their kit. They don't really tend to have stuns or hexes and such. So for most carries, what they want to do is they want to build damage, and they want the rest of their team to provide the lockdown. And that is true for Anti-Mage as well. Although he does buy an Abyssal, it's still not, like, the more lockdown, the better for a carry. He can use it to kill one hero for sure, maybe, and if he gets some lucky bashes. But in the late game, that might not be enough time to actually kill a hero, especially someone tanky like Centaur. He needs someone else to follow up and provide the lockdown, so that those heroes cannot actually attack Anti-Mage. Because like we talked about, he is squishy, he doesn't do well against physical damage. So if, let's say he uses Basher, or he uses Abyssal on the Phantom Assassin, but doesn't kill her in time. If she now, like, BKBs and then fights Anti-Mage, she'll probably just kill him, even though he got the jump. So he needs a support to come provide the lockdown follow-up so that he can do the rest of the damage. In terms of his strengths, we don't need to be as concerned, and in fact, it can be a mistake to try to go with this, right? If he is already a split pusher and we pick someone else who wants to push lanes, like, now we have too many people doing that. And there's not really a way to help him with his mobility and elusiveness because he's just going to, like, be on his own. But if you pick someone who is also good against spellcasters, what if the enemy team just picks, like, physical damage? Then you're like, oh, we're both really weak to the same thing. You don't want to overlap too much, especially from the hard support to the carry. You want to be able to be a hard support. So we are primarily focused on his weaknesses, either enabling our Anti-Mage, which is kind of what I was talking about. But if we think about it from the other side, if the Anti-Mage is on the enemy team, we just reverse it. Oh, he has a slow start. I want someone who can pressure a lot in the early game. Create, not create space, but like create action, take their towers so that Anti-Mage doesn't have space to farm. And he's like, I don't know where to go. Like, they're all over our half of the map, and it's like really scary. This is kind of where we consider his strengths a bit more. So it's like he's very mobile and elusive. We don't want him to do that. We don't want him to be able to just blink around in the middle of a team fight to split push us. So we want someone who's great at catching him out, someone who provides a lot of lockdown, someone who, doesn't just get spell shielded, someone who is either also an initiator so that, he doesn't just blink away and get away. He blinks, and then you're able to blink after him and then stun him or something. Or maybe you blink on top of him, surprise him, so that you can instantly stun him before he can spell shield and blink away. So these are all his strengths and weaknesses. Let's get into some heroes that resemble that. Actually, before going to that, I want to show what you can do with Dota buff. Come over here, click Anti-Mage. Now, if we scroll to the very bottom of this page, you can see some of his matchups. And I don't know exactly how this is calculated, but from my understanding, so like best versus, this just means he has an advantage against Medusa. And down here, it means he is disadvantaged against Meepo. We're not going to go super in depth, but I just want to point out some quick trends, right? Medusa, this is actually a classic counter pick where she is very dependent on her mana shield. And whoa, Anti-Mage burns mana, pretty good matchup. Spectre, late game hero, who comes online really late. Anti-Mage, like we talked about, wants to actually finish the game before Spectre comes online. Zeus, straight magic damage, all countered by Anti-Mage. Gets blinked on, gets killed. Clockwork likes to trap people, but you can just blink out. Wraith King, really weak to mana reduction. Storm, very mana-dependent hero. You see this trend here? These are who he's good against. They all tend to be like late-game heroes, people who don't deal well with mobility, people who are spellcasters. Let's see who he's weak against, though. That's something we're a bit more interested in. What do we got here? We got a fast-paced hero, Meepo. We got Io. This is a little weird to me, actually. I would guess it's because not a lot of people play Io, so let's just ignore that for now. Legion Commander, very physical damage-based, and her duel is, as far as I know, it's like the only spell that doesn't care about spell shield. That might not be fully correct, but to me, it's the biggest one that sticks out. Where for everyone else, if you try to, let's say you're a lion and AM's reflexes are incredible or he's scripting, you blink over him. I may have made that joke already, or I may have cut it. I don't remember. He blinks out and he tries to hex, but he's too slow, and AM spell shields, and you end up hexing yourself, and then AM blinks away. But if you're Legion and you blink and he uses spell shield and you duel him, he casts duel on you, and the result is the same. So that's why she is a very big counter, and we can see that. She's up here. Physical damage carry, high tempo physical damage carry, high tempo, lots of physical damage, high tempo, lots of physical damage, high tempo. Can call through BKB and doesn't care about spell shield. Also does a lot of pure and physical damage, or returns the damage. Physical damage, high tempo. Do you see a trend here? We're going to skip down. A lot of these are core heroes. Let's go find some supports. He's a 4 support, but he provides lockdown, cancels that mobility. Who's the first 5 support we see, really? Natures and Enchantress can be 5s, but this is kind of tough. I would say they're high-tempo cores, and I feel like that is why they're better against AM. I don't think it applies as much as supports. Shadow Shaman, here. He's one of the first, like, real hard supports. Just provides a ton of lockdown, and his spells provide a lot of great tower push. So this is about all we're going to talk about for Dota buff. It is somewhere where you can come to look for this kind of thing. Like, you could just scroll down, look for supports. That's more about what we're going to do in the actual client now. But if this is something you like to do, feel free. And like, you can go in reverse. We're down here. It's like, oh, who might not be good against him? Ancient Apparition, a support that just provides a lot of magic damage. Oh, wait, AM is good against that. He doesn't take as much damage. His lockdown is really bad as well, and he provides a slow. Wait, AM just blinks out of both of those. Like, it's very easy to see these when you sit down and think about it after you break down what makes AM good, what is he bad against. Let's look at Undying. AM's really good at breaking the tombstone, or he could just blink out. Undying provides no lockdown and depends heavily on slows. Skywrath Mage, no real lockdown. He has a silence, sure, but silence can be spell shielded, and it can also be manted off. Atos, which Skywrath tends to buy a lot, same deal. Spell shield, manta. A very fragile hero with a ton of intelligence that can be burned off and then ulted. Whoa. Like, it all makes sense when we break it down. So now we're going to go into the client and actually look at heroes. Here we are. First, we're going to consider playing with Anti-Mage. These are a lot of the common supports. This is from my video on developing a hero pool, and I decided, you know what? These are the most common, not the most common supports, but like the kind of bare minimum acceptable 5 positions. Let's go through them and consider who is good with playing with Anti-Mage. Does this guy make sense? Can he secure the lane? Sorta. Like, he provides heals, provides shields for Anti-Mage. But I don't consider him the best, like, run-up and front-for-you hero. And then Anti-Mage is also a hero that is just going to play away from Abaddon. If you think about the mid to late game power of Abaddon, it's purging your carries. But Anti-Mage is going to be playing on his own, blinking in the back line, places where Abaddon cannot be, or he's going to have a very hard time getting there. So in terms of playing with Anti-Mage, I don't think it's the best synergy. I think Anti-Mage provides a lot of his own like purges and elusiveness. He doesn't really need the help of Abaddon. In the early game, it's kind of okay, but I don't think it's the best. Axe, a very greedy 5. Let's get rid of him. Clockwork, same deal. He can be a lane bully, but I think he's a bit too greedy. Like, Anti-Mage is a very greedy carry. You need fairly selfless position 5s to match with that. And like Axe, Clockwork, I think these are too greedy. I think he's too greedy. Elder Titan can work. He's a good lane bully. Let's leave him in. Io is weird, where he's not really a lane bully, but he can just provide a lot of sustain as the position 5. I would be a little hesitant to pick this in pub games. And especially because you're not going to be able to pair with AM in the late game. AM blinks around a lot in team fights, and he just breaks your tether. And your tether has too long of a cooldown to be able to keep up with him. And I just don't think he's that good as a match in the lane. Like, yeah, you provide sustain, but you're not really an aggressive lane. That's kind of what Io goes one way or the other. He like just wants to provide a bunch of sustain and babysit, but he can't actually like provide a lot of counter pressure in that case. He needs the carry to provide the pressure and just needs sustain. Whereas Anti-Mage is someone who needs sustain but doesn't provide a lot of pressure on his own. So I don't think Io's a good match. This is too greedy. This is quite greedy, provides no lockdown, but at the same time, not a lot of people are good against playing against Phoenix, so Phoenix can be a bit of a bully. So if you're a good Phoenix player, I think it's fine. Pudge, too greedy, doesn't do enough in the lane. Snapfire can work. Pretty good in the lane by herself and can create the space she needs for Anti-Mage. Spirit Breaker, I think, is quite greedy. But if you're a really good Spirit Breaker player, maybe it's fine. I'm kind of hesitant to leave him on here, but we'll do it for now. Too greedy. I think Treant Protector works. You can be a decent lane bully. You also have a heal to keep AM healthy. I think he's fine. Tusk, I think, is a little greedy. He wants to be able to roam around and move a lot. But with an Anti-Mage, you'd be stuck in the bottom lane. I also don't think he's like the best 5. Undying, I think, does work because we're thinking about, pulling this up again. Think about Anti-Mage's weaknesses. What are we... I should have done this at the start before going into this. But like, what are we addressing? A lot of these heroes are addressing the slow start to Anti-Mage. That is really his biggest weakness, is that he needs a lot of help getting through the laning stage and getting to his Battle Fury. And like all of these heroes, as I'm talking about them, a big common trend is like, okay, we want to secure the laning stage. Undying, really good at that. Mirana, not good at doing that. Nyx, no. Venge, not the best. There's not great synergy there, where she provides armor reduction. Anti-Mage is about burning mana. We talked about his weakness of physical damage. And so Venge helps a little bit with that. But at the same time, it's not... I don't know, it's not the best. She's okay, though, if you play her pretty well, but not my favorite. We'll leave her in for now. I think he's a bad 5. I think Viper's a bad 5. AA, not a strong laner on his own, so not the best with AM. You have a really weak lane. Bane, great laner on his own, so he kind of fixes that AM's weak laning stage. Bat Rider, same deal where I don't think he's a very common position 5, but if you are good with a Bat Rider, or if you're good with Bat Rider, then maybe you can make it work. But you have to dominate the lanes, and you should know that. So let's get rid of him. Actually, the funny thing is I created this category to move people down, and I totally forgot about it. So, oops. We'll do it for the next one. Chen. He's pretty good if you can play Chen, because you can create a lot of space on your own. You can win the lane, not only providing not only providing sustain for Anti-Mage, but then you pick up like a ghost from the small camp, level 2, and then you just bully out the off lane with it. And then once you get Anti-Mage to a part where he's like strong on his own, then you dish him, you go to the off lane, and you create a lot of pressure with all your creeps and stuff. So I think Chen's pretty good. CM, I don't think is a great matching because Anti-Mage doesn't really need the mana at the start of the game, and later he kind of has mana from Battle Fury, and he likes a bit more mana from Crystal Maiden, but I don't think it's the best fit. And I think she's kind of hit or miss, where like sometimes she's a good laner, sometimes she's not. If you're a good Crystal Maiden player, I think it's okay. But I think Crystal Maiden's ideal lane is when she doesn't have to be in the lane the whole time, and she can maybe like use Frostbite to farm the hard camp a little bit by pulling him away, frostbiting, and farming it. But Anti-Mage a lot of the time really needs someone in the actual lane, especially in pubs, especially low-level pubs. So yeah, I think she's passable though. She's just an all-around decent 5. Dark Willow, I think kind of a greedy position 5. Yeah, let's just get rid of her. Dazzle, usually a pretty good position 5 in terms of winning the lane. It's a bit matchup dependent, where like sometimes he's a really good bully, sometimes he's not. So I think he's okay. He doesn't really provide lockdown for Anti-Mage, but keeping in mind Anti-Mage's weaknesses, that he's a bit squishy, Grave helps a lot with that in team fights if you happen to be close enough, and Grave is quite a long cooldown. It's not the best, but like it can work out. And then because you're always reducing people's armor, that also helps Anti-Mage in his physical damage weakness. Disruptor, good lane bully. I'm okay with it. Also provides some, not the usual crowd control, but like you do provide some for Anti-Mage by like glimpsing people back, trapping them in kinetic field, maybe silencing them. So I think it works out. And especially just because his Q is a great lane winning spell, I think he's good. Enchantress, I don't know her too well as a position 5. I think she can be a good lane bully. I think she's not in the best spot right now, but historically, when she has been good, like, she's pretty good. Grimstroke, I think Grimstroke really needs a good laning partner to do well in the lane. I think he wants someone aggressive, and Anti-Mage is someone who just wants to farm. So I don't love Grimstroke with Anti-Mage. You need, like, sometimes Anti-Mage can get kills in the lane, and that is when it works out, because like with Spell Shield, Anti-Mage can blink on top, do a bunch of damage, you get the stun, and then he just like finishes off. But it really depends on who the enemy off lane is for that to work out. And so I think it's like a little iffy to play Grimstroke. Jakiro, I think, works really well. You can win lanes, and then later you provide stuns for him. All around good stuff. Caudle, I don't love because Anti-Mage doesn't really benefit from the mana from Chakra Magic to reduce his cooldowns or to give him mana. And so like that part's missing. And then it's really tough to use Caudle's spells without shoving the lane out. And Anti-Mage doesn't like that either. So I don't think it's the best fit. Lich, for some reason I was blanking out. Lich, pretty good lane bully. We'll keep him in. Lina, I think, is too greedy as a 5. Lion, not in a great spot right now, but he's kind of okay. He doesn't usually... You're overlapping a lot with Lion a bit, because, like, Lion wants to drain people mana to get mana back, and AM wants to burn people's mana. So that can be good against, say, Bristleback, who is heavily reliant on his mana in the lane. But against a lot of other people, it tends to be too much overlap, where, say, Lion drains someone's mana entirely, and then Anti-Mage goes to hit him, and he's like, oh, I'm missing a ton of damage because this guy's got no mana to burn. And now it's, like, no good. But Lion does provide a lot of lockdown, which AM loves. but due to the very long cooldown of Finger, I think Lion struggles to create that pressure outside the laning stage. So I don't think it's the best fit. I'm hesitant to take him out because I think he's usually an all-around pretty solid support, but right now he's in a really bad spot. We'll leave him in for now, but just keep that in mind. Jakiro, either way, like looking back, I kind of forgot it. Like, who can create pressure? Chen can create pressure. Jakiro, very good at creating pressure. Enchantress, after you win the lane, you go create pressure. Like, all these heroes are pretty good at that. You have to be careful with Nature's Prophet. I think you can be a lot of overlap, where Nature's 5 is a good lane bully, does secure the lane. But then, after that, you try to go pressure other lanes. Yeah, that works out. But at some point, Nature's Prophet wants to farm, even as a position 5. And when you have an Anti-Mage, it's very dangerous to have a position 5 that needs time to farm. Just because Anti-Mage is the one who's getting time to farm, and you're still going to have a mid and a carry and a 4 who needs to farm. So having a greedy position 5 like Nature's is, in my book. Ogre, lane bully. Enable your Anti-Mage to farm faster by bloodlusting him. Boost his overall. Remember, we talked about he's got the best base attack time, so any kind of attack speed buff is even more effective on Anti-Mage than other heroes. So Ogre, all around good stuff. Provide some lockdown later in the game too. You know, just good stuff. Oracle. I think Oracle's one of those heroes where people don't play against him enough, so they don't understand the damage he does, and so he can be a good lane bully. But the later game synergy is a little awkward, where Anti-Mage tends to be out of range for a lot of your healing spells, and that can be okay. Like, maybe you just focus on your offlaner and your mid and let Anti-Mage do his own thing, so it can work out. But Oracle is not the best at creating pressure on his own, kind of needs like an offlaner in a position 4 or a mid to do that, and then he just supports them. So it can be okay. Much like, say, Lion, not the best at creating something on his own, but he, like, in terms of pushing a lane, he's not very good at it. But, like, in terms of getting a kill, you can smoke with someone and be like, I'll hex and then stun, and then maybe I'll have Finger too. Can Oracle really do that? Not so much. It's like, I'll disarm them. Whoa. Or, like, you can root them, sure, but, like, roots are a little unreliable. Puck, very greedy 5. Pugna, in my opinion, greedy 5. Rubik, greedy 5. Shadow Demon can be good if you can bully out the lane, and then you can create illusions of Anti-Mage, tends to be very good. Yeah, actually, I think it's okay. Shadow Shaman provides a lot of lockdown, can be a bit greedy as a position 5, but I think if you just play him a bit more conservatively and just like focus on your lockdown stuff, I think that's good. And then you ult, after you win the lane, you go out, ult towers, create the space for Anti-Mage. Then when he's ready, you're like, hey, come hit this guy I'm shackling for 5 seconds. And he's like, yeah, I'll do that. Like, it works out really well. Skywrath, too greedy as a position 5. Silencer, I think it's redundant, where he can win the lane, but he can't really do anything to save Anti-Mage if the lane is not going well. So some of these heroes, let's imagine Anti-Mage is getting dove. What does Ogre do? Ogre can stun them. Lion can stun them. Oracle can root them and like disarm them, slow them, maybe even have a stun, glimpse someone back, kinetic field stop them, provide a heal for Anti-Mage and slow, heal Anti-Mage, and a very weak slow. Like Dazzle is another hero that doesn't do the best if he doesn't have Grave, but if he does have Grave, he can Grave Anti-Mage. Slow them and root someone. You have a bunch of creeps hitting them, so they should never be diving Anti-Mage. Nightmare someone, but then you come to Silencer. Silencer provides a fairly weak slow, and then what? He has nothing to prevent them from going on Anti-Mage, whereas a lot of these guys do have something. Like, you can heal Anti-Mage, you can drop Tombstone so that they, the threat of continuing the dive is, way more, and they're getting slowed and taking a bunch of damage, stuns, all that stuff. Phoenix is another one who can't really do anything. That's why I said, Phoenix is a bit, where it's you can provide some slow, and you do provide a strong attack slow, but, if they have a spell to use, you're not actually able to protect Anti-Mage when he needs it. And Silencer falls under that category as well. Silencer right now is also just not a great position 5, I feel like. And I think his ult overlaps a lot with Anti-Mage, where Anti-Mage is the spellcaster killer. Silencer stops spellcasters. Isn't that a little redundant? Right? Where Anti-Mage is going to blink on a spellcaster, maybe abyssal them, bash them, burn all their mana. They're not going to have any mana to cast spells, and then Silencer's like, silence. You couldn't cast any spells anyways, though. So, it's kind of weird. The really long cooldown makes it like, he's more of a team fight hero that wants like these big 5-on-5 fights. And when you're going to be making space as like 3-on-3 and like 4-on-4 kind of things, the huge cooldown on global silence is like, eh. So we'll get rid of him. Techies, too greedy. Visage, too greedy. Warlock suffers some of the same issues as Silencer, where the really long teamfight cooldown can be a bit of an issue, but Fatal Bonds is still really good in terms of smaller fights. Fatal Bonds and the slow, and your very strong heal in the laning stage can just keep sustaining Anti-Mage, and it's okay. I don't think it's the best, but it's okay if you like Warlock. Wind Ranger, I think she's a greedy 5. Goodbye. Wyvern, I think works. You can heal Anti-Mage in the lane. You can, you provide decent lane bullying between your Q and your W. Mid-game, you set up, some team fights. You can create pressure with your ult, force objectives by pushing them, or defend objectives by casting Splinter Blast, and let Anti-Mage, go farm somewhere else. Defending objectives is another way that you can create space, but ideally, usually you're the one, doing stuff. But I suppose that's unfair. In pub games, naturally, it tends to happen where you may be on the back foot with an Anti-Mage, and you could go back through these heroes and be like, who's good at defending towers? Treant, Chikiro. A lot of these guys are not the best. Many position 5s are not the greatest at defending. But Lich, passable. Snapfire, not bad. Elder Titan, kind of okay. Phoenix, yeah. Shadow Shaman, he's got his Q. That's also good. Anyways, let's move on. Witch Doctor. I feel like Witch Doctor prefers to be with really aggressive laners. But in certain matchups, I think it can be okay. Because you have a stun to prevent people from diving AM. If you need to, you can get a heal to heal him throughout the lane. And if it is a matchup where Anti-Mage is pretty good against, then you have Maledict to actually look to secure kills. Whereas Anti-Mage usually doesn't have the damage to fully get a kill. The Maledict helps a bunch in that regard. So I think this can work out. So who would I say are the best, though? I don't know. I think all of these can work. I was sorry. I was thinking about changing my video right now. Where it's okay, we trimmed these down. Could I trim it down even more? Technically, yes, but however you play it, whatever you're comfortable with, I think it can work if you just remember what you're trying to do. You're trying to make space for them, trying to win the lane, and if you feel you can do that with a Warlock, I say go for it. I personally feel it's easiest with Jakiro, maybe a Treant, maybe Ogre. But it's just because I understand those heroes and I know, okay, this is how I'm going to create space for Anti-Mage, how I'm going to keep him healthy in the laning stage. I'm going to, do these pulls. I have a good idea on that. Whereas, in theory, I know what to do with, a Dazzle and Disruptor, but I'm just not as comfortable and familiar with it. And so even though I have the game plan in mind, I don't have the best feeling about it. I think I could make it work, but, there's better stuff. And so if you feel like I really know how to play Shadow Shaman, just go for it. And just keep in mind, okay, you're going to be a pressure kind of lane, but not necessarily looking for kills. This is why Shadow Shaman can be kind of because he needs Anti-Mage to, if you shackle someone, just shackling them is kind of nothing, right? The carry needs to come hit them. And Anti-Mage, a lot of times, just wants to be left alone to farm. So yeah. Let's save that. Let's move on to playing against Anti-Mage. Do the same deal. So, what do we got? If we're against Anti-Mage, let's think about it. We're not going to be in his lane to start. So we're going to focus on pulling up the weakness. we're going to focus still on his slow start, but not in terms of the laning stage, in terms of wanting to create pressure and take towers, force the game before 25 minutes. Or maybe we can think about countering him in the late game, but that can be kind of iffy. A lot of times we just want to set ourselves up to be in a good spot in the early game. Close this again. Oh. Okay. So, Abaddon 5. Is it the best? Not really, because you provide no lockdown against Anti-Mage, and if you just burned your mana, you literally do nothing in a team fight. So I don't like him. I don't think he really does much, especially as a position 5. Like, you have to wait till you have a blink to be able to blink initiate. That sucks. Get rid of him. He just blinks out of cogs. That's no good. Earth Spirit can be okay against him, actually, because you can roll on top of him, and that can, like, you can't spell shield roll. You can do, like, sick manta plays to dodge it, but let's be honest, that's not going to happen in pubs too often. You have, like, an AoE silence as well, so that before he has manta, that's a way to control him a little bit. I don't think he's a very good position 5, but, like, in terms of just thinking about how he counters Anti-Mage, he is a decent hero. And, you know, I'd prefer it if he was, like, an Earth Spirit 4, but if you really like him as a 5, you know, feel free to try it. Problem is, you don't push objectives that well, which is, I think, the easier way to deal with Anti-Mage. You're more a hero that is good at killing Anti-Mage, but that can be iffy if you have a team that doesn't coordinate well with you, if, like, it forces you to play around Anti-Mage, which sometimes it can be all he wants, where he wants you to chase him around endlessly, and if you're not always getting the kills, it stalls out the game and lets Anti-Mage get to the point where he wants to be. So I'd be pretty iffy on it, but I'll leave it for now. Earthshaker, too greedy. ET's okay because he also kind of removes a lot of AM's innate defenses. I'm actually not sure. I think he removes the spell. Actually, I'm not sure. I have to double check. Hang on, guys. So her magic resist is... Oops, sorry. Her magic resist is 36 with 1 point in spell shield. And when we take a natural order, it falls down to 27. And let's make this easy on ourselves. Smack this out so it's at 100. What is she at now? 14. Okay, so it doesn't remove her spell shield stuff, her magic resist from spell shield. So makes him a little more susceptible to magic damage, but still not really the way you want to kill Anti-Mage. But the good news is you do reduce the armor, which makes him even worse. So, like, when he ultimately buys, like, a, Battle Fury... Oh, sorry, what am I saying? A Butterfly, his, what else? Manta, maybe a Scotty. He's getting no armor from that. And these are very common items he likes to get. He doesn't really like to buy armor items. And so that's where Elder Titan can be pretty good, when you reduce all his physical, make him even weaker to physical than usual. Now we magically cut back to what we were just talking about. Actually, I probably won't. I'll probably just do it right there. So where were we? Io doesn't provide much against Anti-Mage. I don't think he's good. Too greedy. I think Anti-Mage has too easy of a time just killing Phoenix. I think it's way too hard to lock him down with Pudge. It's kind of hard to land the stun, and it's very difficult to land a good ult because he just blinks away. So personally, I don't think Snapfire is the best. But Snapfire can create pressure, so if you have other heroes that deal with Anti-Mage, and then you just provide one more stun, it's, like, not the worst. Spirit Breaker as a 5. Again, we said he's good, but I don't think he's the best 5. Let's get rid of him. Tiny doesn't really stop Anti-Mage. Treant is weird, where you can be good against Anti-Mage in certain regards. So, like, when you're invisible, Anti-Mage loves to split push and then hide in trees when you go to get him. So Treant can be a great way to set up on that and be like, okay, guys, I am now next to Anti-Mage. Come gank him. When he blinks into trees, I will find him. If he's teleporting, I will cancel it with my ult or something. But the issue is, Anti-Mage will almost always buy Manta, and Manta counteracts your ultimate as Treant. Good side about Treant Protector is that when Anti-Mage is split pushing, you can slow that down. Either you are there using Nature's Grasp on the wave to kill the wave off so we can't just split push, or you're healing the tower so you can ignore Anti-Mage a little bit and focus, your team can focus more on like forcing objectives, and then you just heal the towers. But oftentimes Anti-Mage can just get away because you don't really provide true lockdown. Tusk, same deal, not the best lockdown. Undying, I think you're just like no good because Anti-Mage just blinks away from you. Mirana, no reliable lockdown. Nyx, okay. He's not a good position 5 in my opinion. Not at least right now. But because you can stun out of Invis, it is a way to set up on Anti-Mage without him knowing you're there. You can like ult next to him, and he will be farming something with Battle Fury. You use your spiked Carapace to stun him before he can react. Then that way you can actually land your ult as well. You can hit him with your ult instead of having to Q out of ult, which breaks your invis, and then you don't get the bonus damage. But you can spike Carapace, stun Anti-Mage, hit him, break his passives, then stun. Provides a lot of lockdown before this guy can react because you're coming at him invisibly. So the hero on its own is like okay against Anti-Mage, but I just don't think he's a good 5. Venge, very difficult to stun Anti-Mage because Magic Missile is just like so obvious that it's coming, right? It's not a fast it's not a fast projectile, and like your cast animation is obviously there. All you do is provide slows, which do nothing to someone who has high mobility and blink. You don't get a silence until you're 25. That's awful. He just blinks out of you. Can be okay. It's because Bane is both single target spells, it's a little tough, right? Because if he sees you coming, he will spell shield and then blink away before you can do much. But if you are able to nightmare him, that can be okay if he hasn't used a Manta. If he has an illusion there, he can use the illusion to break the spell or the nightmare, and that's a bit of a pain. That's kind of high level, so if you're playing against bad anti-mages, it's still possible. But more than that, if you can ult him from Fog of War or something, he is stuck for a really long time. But if he spell shields you, you know, it's tough. So it can work, but it's tough. Bat Rider, same issue. I think Anti-Mage just blinks away from the slows. He just spell shields the lasso. He has magic resistance. Chen, very good against it because you can create the fast tempo that Anti-Mage can't deal with. And you can you can control a lot of creeps to provide lockdown. So if Anti-Mage blinks on you, but you have like 4 centaurs, you can be like stun, 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 and Anti-Mage just dies. CM, I think she's a little too fragile, where Anti-Mage just blinks on top of you and kills you really quickly. And because he has a Basher naturally, and because he has Mana Void as well, he can cancel your ult if he chooses to. But more than that, he'll probably just hit you and kill you. You don't do that much damage to him because you're straight magic, and your lockdown is not the best. Your lockdown is a root, which you can just Manta out of. Let's get rid of her. You can just Manta off both your stuff and blink away from like everything else. Dazzle, funny enough, Dazzle does not provide lockdown, which is kind of the main thing that you're considering when you're playing against Anti-Mage. But Dazzle does prevent him from just blink killing one hero at the start of a fight, like finding a core, like your core Storm. It prevents Anti-Mage from blink abyssaling that guy and then burning all his mana and killing him because you can just grave the Storm. Now, granted, Storm's kind of useless without mana, so that may not have been the best example. But during the whole time you're saving Storm and you're casting all your spells, you're reducing AM's armor, which we talked about is already one of his weaknesses. So Dazzle is also able to play a very fast tempo game because of the way the hero functions. So you're able to really force the game quickly before AM can get going. I like Disruptor against Anti-Mage because Glimpse is a instant cooldown or an instant use spell, so Anti-Mage doesn't really have time to react. And with maxed out Glimpse and getting some cast range items, maybe you just catch AM from really far away. If he blinks and then spell shields, you just like follow and wait a second, and then you glimpse him back when spell shield drops. Or he blinks and you glimpse from Fog of War. And then when you bring him back, you ult and kinetic field so that he can't get out. He can Manta, but he's still silenced. This is one of the AoE spells really ruin Anti-Mage. Enchantress, she has no way to control him. He just blinks away. So that part is not so good. She can push a fast tempo, but I don't think it's strictly enough. only being able to like control one creep, for example. I just don't think it's like that great against Anti-Mage. Grimstroke's kind of interesting, where your silence. First off, it's hard to cast your silence on Anti-Mage because he has Spell Shield. And even if you get it on him, he has such a fast attack speed that he just breaks it so quickly. You have some weird interactions with your ult. So if you ult him or someone next to him and he gets leashed, he won't be able to blink away, so that does provide some lockdown, technically. He can't use his mobility. And then it's kind of weird where if you ult Anti-Mage but he spell shields it, it won't cast back to you, I think. I was testing this a little earlier. That seems like a bug, but that's how it currently functions when I was testing it. And when he's soul binded and he uses spell shield, but you cast your W, that also won't get reflected onto you. So it's kind of weird. I think you do provide like okay lockdown against Anti-Mage, but none of it is instant besides the ult if Anti-Mage happens to be next to someone. So not the best solo hero versus like the solo support versus Anti-Mage idea, but if you have someone else to initiate on Anti-Mage, I think Grimstroke is a great follow-up. Jakiro, pretty good in my opinion. Because your stun is AoE, it cannot be spell shielded, and you will also catch any like illusions if he tries to manta dodge or anything. Your magic damage, that's like most of your damage is magic. It's not great against Anti-Mage, but Anti-Mage can't reflect any of your spells, and because two of your spells provide a attack slow, this hurts Anti-Mage in his overall damage output. And because your spells are also all AoE, it'll affect his illusions as well. So you're not just slowing the hero, you're slowing his illusions. And because your magic damage, like it's reduced, but it'll still do extra damage to illusions, you're able to quickly tell which is the real Anti-Mage. So overall, I like Jakiro. Jakiro can force a fast tempo, switch to the off lane, or to AM's safe lane, actually, and like create a lot of pressure that way. Coddle, I think, is not the best. Anti-Mage can just blink out of your ult or attack your ult. I think he just like ignores Coddle, and I don't think it matters. Plus, you like it goes both ways, where it's like, oh, Anti-Mage burned all the mana from my core, but then I restored it. But now that's just more mana for Anti-Mage to burn off for extra damage. So it kind of goes both ways, and I personally feel it favors Anti-Mage. Lich, a lot of single target spells that are easy to reflect with Spell Shield. And if you actually like get Frost Blast, or not Frost Blast, the ultimate onto him, which I'm currently forgetting, if you ult him, Anti-Mage can just blink away and your ult is done. So I don't think it's the best matchup. And I don't think you're the best at forcing a fast-paced game. Lena, personally, I think she's really greedy. I know she has an AoE spell, but like a lot of her damage is magic. And especially as a support, it's going to be all magic. And that is going to be useless against Anti-Mage. Your AoE stun is also quite hard to hit against someone as mobile as Anti-Mage. The difference with Jakiro's is that Jakiro's is really long range. So it's easier to surprise Anti-Mage. But hers is much shorter range. No good. He provides no actual lockdown. You know, he can sprout, but Anti-Mage, first of all, buys a Battle Fury so he can just cut it. And then he can also just blink out. And then he's just going to farm your Treant. So I think that's bad. Ogre, again, single target spells. But you're kind of this frontliner, so that kind of helps to like speed up the game where you're just like forcing objectives as an ogre because you're strong at the start of the game. By the same time, you have a very small mana pool, which means Anti-Mage can quickly make you useless and then just ignore you. Like, he can hit you 3 or 4 times, and he's like, okay, you can't cast any spells. I don't actually have to waste the extra 2 seconds to kill you. I can if I want. Or I could just leave you here, and all you can literally do is hit people with your club. So I think it's kind of eh. But if you're good at forcing a fast game, then it's okay. But let's get rid of him anyways. Oracle, no solid lockdown. That's kind of the biggest thing about playing against Anti-Mage when you're thinking about your hard supports. You want people with lockdown, and ideally you want them to be able to force the game into a faster pace, but really I would prioritize lockdown. And Oracle, not good at it. Puck actually is kind of good at it, where the ult cannot be broken by Anti-Mage, and that the silence can be, but at least in the early game, like that's useful. But you are mostly magic damage, and I don't think it's like reliable lockdown, so I don't like it. I don't think Rubik's a good 5 either. Shadow Demon doesn't provide lockdown in the usual sense, but your ultimate is a huge pain for any carry. Yes, it can be reflected, I believe, but I think it's a pretty instant cast. Like you cast it and it goes immediately. There's no like long projectile. So I think it's workable, especially if you surprise him. Plus, you can steal his illusions by disrupting either him or his illusions. And honestly, Anti-Mage hates having his own mana burned, funny enough. So anytime you're able to do that with illusions, it's kind of good. But the issue is that sometimes you'll disrupt Anti-Mage, and then it's like, okay, now my illusion's gonna hit him. But in that time, he just blinks away. Like, the blink comes off cooldown, and he just gets out. So I personally don't think it's the best. It's like, if you have someone who can follow up on your disruption, so like say you have a Jakiro 4 and you disrupt Anti-Mage, and then now you're getting the illusions, and then Jakiro provides the follow-up stun. That's pretty good. If you have like a Mirana 4 who can land the arrow right after. But the issue with that is it's kind of dependent on your other teammates, and we are thinking more about like, just my hero, how do I do? So let's get rid of him. And then actually, for that reason, I'm going to get rid of Grimstroke as well. Where if we're thinking about like, okay, what can just my hero do? Like, Grimstroke really depends on others. Lion and Shadow Shaman, both pretty good. They have an instant hex that makes them really good against Anti-Mage, who won't have time to reflect it if you are playing properly and he's not scripting. And then they have a second stun, Shackle or his stun, to follow up the hex, just to provide a ton of lockdown on Anti-Mage so that your carries can finish off the kill. So I think these two are really good. Silencer, your ultimate is all about that huge long cooldown silence to slow down the enemies, and AM just mantas it. So it's awful. And he provides no hard lockdown. Same deal. No hard lockdown. Techies at the 5. Too greedy, I think. But your stasis mines are quite annoying for Anti-Mage. And if you set up traps to kill Anti-Mage, it can work, because Anti-Mage will be by himself, and he like won't expect the a stasis mine in the trees followed by a bunch of mines. But I just think it's not very good. Visage, not good. Warlock, the slow doesn't do much against Anti-Mage, so that's no good. If you don't have to target Anti-Mage with your Q, and in fact you should not. So like, if you were to cast Fatal Bonds on Spell Shield and you Fatal Bonds your own team, that is a massive issue. So rather, you should target not Anti-Mage, but someone near Anti-Mage, and then it naturally splits. It selects like other targets, and Anti-Mage can't reflect that. Kind of similar to Soulbind in that way. So if you play Warlock, try to do that so that you don't ruin your team. But the issue is Warlock just doesn't provide a lot of low cooldown lockdown for Anti-Mage, and his ult like does a brief stun, but it is such a long cooldown, and then Anti-Mage just blinks away after that. So I would say Warlock's not good. Windrunner, too greedy in my opinion. You do have kind of a nice long stun where, similarly, if you target Anti-Mage, that can be too obvious and he can just spell shield that. But if you target something next to Anti-Mage, like you can latch him, and I don't think he can reflect that. I don't actually play Wind Ranger to know, but I believe he can't reflect it. But outside of that, like, it's a very unreliable stun, and so I just don't think it's very good. Wyvern can be okay, where your save isn't the best. Like, you'll protect them from physical damage, but Anti-Mage can still burn their mana in that time, and then he ults them like when they have no mana, if he so chooses, or he waits till they're done, like being frozen, and then he attacks them for physical damage, and they have no mana to use any spells to like react. So your save is kind of like not the best. You don't provide any lockdown between your other spells until like you're 25 and you have the stun talent. But your ultimate is kind of a long range way to set up on Anti-Mage, and it's not the worst. It is kind of a long cooldown, but also, not nearly as long as Warlock. So it's like workable if you want it to be. Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor stuns are like not very long, and because they depend on bouncing back and forth, I think it's very easy to spell shield because the projectile is not that fast. And like if he has a manta or a blink or anything, like it's very difficult to actually get it to bounce between anti-mage and something else and provide consistent lockdown. And then say you stun him and you're trying to follow up with maledict and alt, he just blinks away. Or he comes and bashes you and stop your stuff. So it's like it's not the best. But Witch Doctor ignoring Anti-Mage is kind of good at, like, he can get a lot of kills in his lane and like start to speed up the game, and then he rotates to like create action. So in that regard, if you're playing Witch Doctor as this fast-paced hero, it can work. So to wrap it up, the heroes that fall under both categories that are good playing with or against Anti-Mage, at least in my own opinion, are these heroes that you see right here. And my like personal recommendations that I really enjoy playing against Anti-Mage, or maybe not, like, I don't know who enjoys playing against Anti-Mage necessarily, but I think these three are pretty good at playing against him. Jakiro, I've just been spamming a lot, so like that's very comfortable for me. But I think Jakiro just forces objectives really well while Anti-Mage is still farming, and then even when Anti-Mage comes out to fight, you can like Ice Path is just a great lockdown spell against Anti-Mage. The AoE, the long range, I think it's just really good. And then your attack slows from both your Q and your E, and I'll even take the talent, I think are great ways to reduce Anti-Mage's, his attack speed and therefore his damage output, reducing his effectiveness. Shadow Shaman, similar, but a little different, where his spells are single target, but like we talked about, I think the Hex into Shackle is a really great way to get Anti-Mage killed. And then your Q is good at pushing waves, and then you ult the objectives. That same trend. And then Disruptor, Q, really good in the lane. So you're like, you want to win your own lane, even if you're not with Anti-Mage, to start your team off on a good foot so that, let's say you're playing against the Anti-Mage, you still want to win your lane so that you can quickly rotate out to go to Anti-Mage's lane and harass him out. If you play some weak laner where you have to stay in the safe lane the whole time, you're never able to go rotate and bother Anti-Mage. So I like Disruptor for that, and then I like the combination of Glimpse, Kinetic Field, and your ultimate to really ruin Anti-Mage's day, make it really hard for him to be as mobile as he wants to, and let's be honest, these are pubs, so Anti-Mage is probably not buying BKB when he needs to be, which means anytime you Kinetic Field ult him, he's just stuck there. He can Manta if he wants, but he's still just silenced. He can't use a spell shield. He can't blink out, and your team just kills him in the time you give them. You have like 4 seconds to kill the guy, and like we talked about, he's quite fragile to physical damage. So if he's not being able to use his elusivity, he just dies while you trap him there. And then if you're playing with Anti-Mage, all of that still applies, where you can win the lane for your Anti-Mage, you can win the lane for your Anti-Mage. Shadow Shaman, I think, has a little bit harder of a time winning the lane for his Anti-Mage, but he still can do it. I think he's at least a decent laner. I don't think he's bad to most matchups. He has really good attack damage and good like a good burst in his Q. And if they go on your Anti-Mage, if you're level 4, you have Ice Path, or you have 2 slows and 2 attack speed slows, that makes it difficult for them to chase Anti-Mage. And you just put out a lot of damage, so they're kind of hesitant to do that. You can Hex one and Shackle the other, or, if there's only one guy who's the issue and the other like doesn't really matter, you Hex and Shackle that one. You let AM get away. Disruptor, you can Kinetic Field them, prevent them from going up, glimpse them back. You can, maybe just by using your Q ahead of time, you just keep them low so that they can never go on your Anti-Mage. I think these guys work both with and against Anti-Mage. I think they're pretty easy to play overall. This guy, you have to get the like glimpse combo down, but I don't think that's that bad. But of course, you don't have to tailor your picks just for Anti-Mage, right? I do think we're going to see a lot of Anti-Mages in the coming games, but, if you're not sure, like, if your team is not going to pick Anti-Mage, then, like, yeah, maybe you could spread out to any of these heroes, or honestly, you can play other heroes too if you want, right? These are just the ones I think will be good against Anti-Mage. But other heroes can still play against Anti-Mage if you know what you're doing. But yeah, you know what? We won't go that much into it. It's just like what I think. And if someone on your team definitely wants to play Anti-Mage, then maybe pick one of these heroes who can like help the guy out. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave any questions. I wish you the best of luck in killing anti-mages or helping your anti-mage win.